Oh, do you want to? hello, and welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and kick us off with a couple of sentences, and then I know Ryan has an intro prepared too. Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone's having a great day so far. I'm excited to kick us off. My name is Heather Grant. I am one of the community admins here at the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. Thank you again for joining us today. If you are not already a member of the maintenance community on Slack, we would love to have you join us. I will add a link on how to sign up in the chat in just a moment. The recording from our session today will be available in the maintenance community tomorrow. Ryan and Ricky are both available themselves to answer questions in the Slack group. So please feel free to share the recording of this webinar or the invitation to Slack itself with friends, colleagues, or anyone you know who would benefit from some of hearing these two's expertise. Our session today is a special Q&A webinar. We've been collecting some questions from the members of the maintenance community over the last few weeks, and we're going to go ahead and answer those questions today. We're also accepting questions from our live attendees, of course, so please feel free to use the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions throughout the discussion. We'll take those questions alongside the rest of our conversation and do our best to get through as many as we can. I would encourage you to post those questions that we maybe don't have a chance to answer live in the Ask the Community channel on Slack for answers from more experts as well as more community members. That is all from me. Thank you again, Ryan, Ricky, everyone else for being here. Ryan, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Heather, and thanks everyone for joining today's live session, the Q&A with Ricky and Ryan. For those of you guys that don't know, my name is Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Upkeep. A little bit about my background. I was once a process engineer at a chemical manufacturing facility. I saw how bad technology was, and that's when I first started to build Upkeep. We started out with the premise that we thought technicians deserve better software, better technology to streamline their maintenance process. And now today, Upkeep is a software that services over 3,000 businesses. We have 150 employees just focused on building better technology for technicians to do their work better, faster, and more productively. So that's a little bit about me. Ricky here is an absolute legend in the space. He's worked in the industry, has written books about maintenance and reliability. And those are some of the same books that I actually learned from as well. Ricky, I kind of want to pass it over to you to quickly give an introduction on yourself before we jump in, and then we can start getting into some Q&A. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Welcome everyone. I'm Ricky Smith. I'm looking for a good session today. I see we already got people from Mexico, Nigeria. Ahmed, where are you from? I see Ahmed on there. Canada. Oh yeah, I know you. Good. Welcome everyone. Hey, let's get started.
All right. So again, thank you, Ricky, for joining me. Today's session is all about a live Q&A where we ultimately ask you guys, our community, to ask questions that hopefully we'll have an answer to. We'll see if we can find an answer for you. Over the past few weeks, we basically opened up this Q&A to the community to basically submit some questions that either I or Ricky will answer. We'll try to get through as many as possible, but I do want to forewarn everyone here that a lot of questions got asked. In the tune, I think close to 100 questions. So again, we probably won't get through all 100 or so, but we'll try to see how far we do get. So with that being said, it sounds like Ricky's ready to jump in and start answering some questions. I am. So let's do this.
Let's do it.
Before I share my screen, we again had about 100 questions get asked. Here, I'm going to share my screen right now. All right, I'm guessing, oops, there we go. All right, I'm guessing everyone can see, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So as I mentioned, we had a bunch of questions get asked. And Heather and the team, here, let me see if I can pull up some of the questions that are also, well, actually, never mind. let me quickly break it down. So we had a bunch of questions get asked, and Heather and the team basically helped us categorize all of the different questions into 6 main categories: preventative maintenance, maintenance strategy, culture management, maintenance metrics, KPIs, technical, and basically any other question that did get asked that didn't fall into one of these clear-cut categories. So these were the 6 main themes. And why don't we just go ahead and start with the first category of preventative maintenance. All right. So for the first set of questions around preventative maintenance, a lot of these questions were asked by members of our community: Ahmed, David, Jacob, Momad, Sarah, and some anonymous folks. The first question in our list today around preventative maintenance is: what are some of the reasons breakdowns occur after a PM is done? This seems like it seems like a simple answer here, but I'm sure it's very, very nuanced as well. Ricky, what do you think?
Well, this is a big one for me because I talk about this all the time. Call it insanity. Performing preventive maintenance on equipment that continues to break down. It's not logical. If we're doing preventive maintenance, we're doing it correctly by specifications, then we should get the desired outcome. But in a lot of companies, they don't. All they measure is preventive maintenance compliance. What I like to do is measure PM compliance, PM labor hours versus emergency urgent labor hours. How are they correlating? Because if preventive maintenance is not, if we have breakdowns, something's wrong with our PM program, or the equipment condition is not stable.
Yeah. So I'm just pulling up all the different questions. Again, we're going to get some live questions here, and also we'll try to go through the list and see how many we can actually answer directly as well. And so to that question, Ricky, it sounds like there are a lot of different ways there are a lot of reasons why breakdowns occur even after PMs are done, and there's a sense of just continuous breakdowns and continuous maintenance as well. The next question here around preventative maintenance is how is a
Ryan, let me answer one thing. Bob Latino's got a great answer. Said you can't have quality output without quality input.
Yeah.
Great point.
Absolutely. So this next question here is ultimately, how is a preventative maintenance checklist created? Do you have any suggestions, recommendations on PM checklists? Do you just follow manufacturers' guidelines? Do you create your own, Ricky? Do you recommend hiring a specialist to help you create your own?
Well, hiring a specialist has more to do with how bad things are. But if they're not that bad, how do you create a checklist? The checklist, or the inspection criteria should be based on data, because all components and parts fail certain ways. If we know how it fails, then if we look at that, like let's just say a motor, a 50 horsepower motor or a 100 horsepower motor, we have to lubricate. Okay, if we put on a checklist that we have to lubricate the motor, just say it's 100 horsepower, and we have to lubricate that motor. How do you do it? There's certain procedures, and that's the problem a lot of people miss. They have a relief plug underneath them, most of them, unless they got seal bearings, and I've seen that too. Okay, don't put grease where the seal bearings, even though there's a Zerk fitting on it. Read the nameplate. So you supposed to pump grease in, and as the motor rotates, the old grease should come out, and you should see once the new grease comes out, then you can put the plug back in. So it's not complicated. It's not everything we have in the world, we know how it fails because they have failed before.
Yeah. So I think what I hear from that answer, Ricky, it sounds like it's kind of a combination of different tactics for creating PM checklists, right? It's like if it's not too bad, if what you're doing right now, maybe following manufacturing guidelines is all right. But if you're following these manufacturing guidelines, and you're having issues around your plant, then maybe you do hire that specialist. And if you don't have the budget for that, then maybe what you do is you create checklists and inspections based off of failure modes and the different the past history of your asset and things that have actually occurred in the past.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like a combination of different tactics depending on the severity, the criticality of each component as well.
Well, the thing, like you were saying, if you start with, what the equipment manufacturer recommends is a good starting place.
Yeah.
But, some critical assets, you're going to have to use RCM or FMEA. You're going to have to use some other tool to give you more information. But the biggest information you have is the work orders. The information you get from the equipment tells you maybe we need to make some adjustments. Maybe we need a new PM, whatever that is. But make sure you don't do like a lot of companies do. Every time they have a failure, they say, hey, write a new PM.
Yeah.
Like, what's the equipment? What's the problem? Maybe we need to do the root cause of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an interesting balance, right? Because the intention is great, right? Every time you have a failure, let's, create some mitigation strategies so that it doesn't happen again. But I think what you're also saying, Ricky, is that you don't want to just create these redundant PMs just to say you did something. And maybe
I conducted a PM optimization at a company, and what we did as we went through the work orders, each work order, each PM line by line. First thing we saw was, there's different categories you put them in when you do a PM optimization. One is they had no value. Why are we even doing that step? Doesn't make sense. Or the machine's not there anymore. We took it out 10 years ago. We're still writing the PM, still following the PM on it. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then going, if you really look at the PM checklist, don't have long, lengthy sentences. All I want is a noun, adjective, and a verb. So a lot of companies, they're serious. Check chain drive and then tell them how to check the chain drive. Give them a picture, good, bad.
Yeah.
X, which one you think. You don't have to get complicated with it.
I mean, I kind of love that, Ricky. What I heard from you is like, don't create these like long-winded checklists in tasks. The simple thing of creating pictures, and this is what good looks like. This is what bad looks like. Yeah. I kind of love that. I mean, pictures can tell 1,000 words.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, and I want to ask if Heather can help share her screen. It might look better for the audience.
I can. Just give me 1 second to get all set up.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No,
a little bit better.
If you need to do a root cause analysis on your PM program, call Bob Latino or buy his book.
All right. There we go. So the next question, I think this is all centered around the same topic, Ricky, but it's how do you create an effective PM checklist for the beginning stages of a PM program? I think we actually just briefly talked about that. Like, you kind of start with manufacturing guidelines. Like, that's where you start.
That's the best thing to do.
And then you ask yourself, is it working? Is it not working? If it is, then great. Don't really change anything. If it's not working, then that's when you start doing RCAs, and that's when you start doing deeper analysis, and you might even hire someone like a Bob Latino.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, Bob said he agrees with it.
All right. What's next? Ricky, what are the first steps to move away from reactive maintenance in an old factory that has machines that have been working for more than 18 years? The mechanics can't change old behavior, the maintenance system, methods. So, I need some serious advice in this field. I think what this person is trying to say is, traditionally it seems like the culture of the community or the culture of the team is all just reactive. It's old machinery. It seems like the managers are kind of okay with the way that it's been running, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I tell people on that is, and I've seen this many times. In fact, I was in a plant 3 weeks ago that has this exact problem. And they said, where do we start? Everything's falling apart. The vice president, he come in and talked to me. I'm like, where do you start? I said, well, what do you think the biggest problem is? He said, it's everywhere. I said, good. Then we'll just pick one line, one production line, and we'll go take that production line. And there's two points to it. We need to make sure when we create PM program on it, the equipment is in a maintainable condition. So it means as we write PMs, we need to restore the equipment, one equipment, a component at a time, and then put a warning sign on it. Warning, maintainable equipment, no reactive maintenance authorized in this area. Because you got to change the way people think. Because when you put that sign up, we're writing new PMs, we're restoring equipment at the same time. We don't want the same people doing it. In fact, this vice president bought into that concept. He said, that's exactly what we got to do.
Yeah.
And we're about ready to start that.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, Ricky, is it's a culture shift. I think that's what this person seems like they're struggling with as well. Like, it's more than just let's change our process. It's change the way that we also think.
Yeah.
That starts with people. That starts with upper management. That starts from the technicians themselves. And it's I think what I hear is like, you have to get buy-in from top and also the bottom as well to make this shift and change.
Yeah, because the thing is, once you have buy-in from the top, the rest is easy.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get down to the lower level, though, they're tired of fighting the fires all the time. Yeah, they're tired of it, so they want to get engaged. But you're going to have to educate them. You have to give them the training they need so they understand what they're doing. Because you just don't go out and say, okay, let's go out and write PMs. Now, that's why don't we first think about, is there a process that we can use? Maybe like PM optimization, because that's a good start right there. Because there's a certain questions that you answer on there to tell you what do we need to do.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What do we got? How do we plan PM interventions during realistic time so PM KPIs can get close to 100%? What? Well, I don't fully understand that question. Ricky, what do you think?
I don't like the idea of PM interventions because PMs are typically done on time-based. Okay? Not based on a failure. That's what not to do the PMs because we're going to be down for 3 hours. I've seen that before. A lot of places, because they want to get 100% PM compliance. What's the objective of preventive maintenance? It's to prevent failure. It's not there to try to trick something or do something gee whiz, because someone's already created this before. It's not complicated.
Yeah. So I think the question that you're trying to, answer here is like, do we even want PM compliance to get to 100%? Like, is that the primary goal? And it sounds like
that's right.
Is PM compliance 100% the goal, or is it uptime of your equipment?
Let me think about that. Yeah, I think I want the equipment running to specifications is what I want.
Right. All right. So this kind of concludes our first section around common questions that we got in the community around preventative maintenance. Obviously, we also do have a live audience here that has asked some questions. So why don't we take some of those? Ahmed asked the question, AMD2, which is the best method of RCA, the 5 whys, fault tree, fishbone, etc.? Do you have a perspective on this, or should we bring in Bob Latino as well?
I think we got a couple people on here that can answer that. Ahmed, and Bob. Hey, Bob, you there?
Bob, what do you think? Are you there?
He's typing.
All right.
Repeat the question.
What's the best method of RCA? There's a few different ways to conduct an RCA. 5 whys, fishbone, and fault tree analyses. And obviously, there are a bunch more.
I got one called a Jedi.
The Jedi.
Just do it. You see a problem, you know the answer. Just do it. Don't analyze yourself to death. Okay. Yeah. I mean, really, that is a strategy as well.
let's see what Bob Latino thinks. And why don't we also see what a few other people have asked? Apart from RCM, what are other ways that can be used to determine a maintenance strategy to adopt for an asset? So obviously RCM is just one way of looking at, creating a maintenance strategy. Are there others, Ricky?
Failure mode and effect and criticality analysis.
Yep.
The criticality analysis is important, so we focus on the right assets first and the right component, the right part.
Yep. And how do you determine the right strategy based on your asset?
Well, I mean, the right strategy is because they only fail certain ways. Predictive maintenance is a big one that a lot of people don't understand. They use it for insurance spares, but they don't use it enough in their organization. Predictive maintenance is huge. And a lot of people do. In fact, I was at a plant recently. They've got a company comes in, does predictive maintenance, but the equipment still fails.
Yeah.
And I asked the question, I said, so what do you think? The vice president says, what do you think is going on? He said, I have no idea. I said, really? So they're doing preventive maintenance on the equipment and it continues to break down. Maybe it's not in a maintainable condition. I mean, so what do you start at?
Yeah.
I guess Bob got quiet over there. He didn't want to jump in.
That's okay. But thank you, Ahmed and Long Life for asking all these questions. Here's another question that
Here you go. He's up.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Tough question, but depth and breadth of analysis is based on a severity of outcome. There has to be an appropriate balance, or we could be inefficient in the use of our time. I prefer a logic tree for mid to serious events, then fishbone for middle events, and 5 whys for less severe events and defect elimination efforts. Bob Latino writes, typical consultant,
Absolutely.
It depends.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ultimately, I do think that is also the right answer as well. There are different strategies, RCA strategies, for a reason, and obviously they exist for a reason. One size does not fit all, and I really appreciate the context there, Bob. I learned something from that as well.
Yeah, I tell you, the 5 whys is a great thing to teach our technicians.
Yeah,
because a lot of times they may be informally using it, they don't know, but the 5 whys works very well. On certain things, just like Bob's got. It depends on what the problem is and what the desired outcome is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
It's easy, and it's also easy to remember. And like you said, Ricky, it seems like a lot of people already do that kind of in their head before formally thinking this is a maintenance strategy or sorry, an RCA strategy. All right. Ahmed actually asked another interesting question. Thank you for asking this question, Ahmed. Why should an engineer choose reliability as their career? What's the incentive? What's the attraction? And maybe we can put this in reference to like, why choose reliability as your career over, maintenance even, or, any other position?
Well, reliability engineer, because you have the engineering background, and you want to take that next level. Because if you're a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, you understand the engineering characteristics of equipment. So my recommendation is those type people. What I used to do, we'd have new maintenance engineers that we hired for a company I worked for, but we'd assign them to the best maintenance technician for the first 90 days. So they learn the equipment, they learn how things work, and after that 90 days, they got it. I mean, they're go.
Absolutely. All right. Very cool. Let's move on to this next big category around maintenance strategy and all the questions that we got around that. So what's our first question? All right. How does one present or justify to an old school manager the advantage of condition-based maintenance, since he or she believes only on PMs considering just immediate cost? So it's essentially like, right now we've got a strategy. It sounds like more centered around today, around PMs. It sounds like this person is wanting to bring more predictive condition-based monitoring and maintenance techniques into the plant, but it seems like there's this difference of thought. How do you convince someone that the advantages of condition-based maintenance and monitoring that to someone that may not fully believe in it? Ricky, have you dealt with this in the past?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Condition-based maintenance is important, but preventive maintenance, I'll just make it real simple: to inspect, adjust, lubricate. There's no predictive to preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
We may do inspections, and through the inspections, we may find a problem that would come back later. Because preventive maintenance is a great tool to tell us what we got, what are our failures. Our most critical assets we should be using PDM or condition-based maintenance on.
Yeah.
And by the way, people use CBM, PDM, SMRP says they're used interchangeably, the definition of it.
Yeah.
So
I was actually just having a conversation about this morning. And PMs are it's a very rudimentary way of managing and maintaining our equipment. It's at a very fundamental sense, it's basically one size fits none. It's this idea that, hey, we're going to change our oil, replace the filter every XYZ months, but it doesn't take into consideration all the current status of whatever that machine is, the oil is at that time, which is why condition-based maintenance is so important.
I take an oil sample on my truck. My truck has got 185,000 miles on it, four-wheel drive, still running great. I take oil samples. Typically, I do it every 6 months is what I do. But you got to do it the right way. Oil sampling can't be just done. Somebody sticks something down in a hole and pull some oil out. I mean, you gotta have some quantification or qualification. How are you going to take those samples? Like a lot of people, when they take oil samples, like on a hydraulic system, they take it right out of the reservoir down some level. So they may stick a tube down, pull it out, pump it out, whatever. To me, I want a sample port at the middle level of a hydraulic or a lubrication system.
Yeah. So I think what I hear from you, Ricky, and to answer this question very directly is, running a condition-based maintenance program is not difficult. It could be as easy as manually checking and measuring, taking an oil sample.
Yep.
But it can save you a ton of money, a ton of time as well. So maybe the best way to justify it is just start doing it, right? And take one piece of equipment, one thing, start measuring it, and then you can start really looking at like the potential implications of that on cost.
But I'd make sure the equipment's in a maintainable condition first.
So that's a great segue into a question that Sarah Holm asked here. How do I know if equipment is in maintainable condition?
So it's all about the data. That's why you got to have a dashboard. You need to have a maintenance dashboard and tell you where your bad actors are. Rework's a good metric. The SMRP metric. It's work. We have to go back to the same machine again. So let's just say every time we go back to it, for whatever reason, in between interval, then what is the problem? Is the interval incorrect on PM, or do we have a condition problem with the asset?
Yeah.
Sarah, did I answer your question?
So you look at rework. It looks like Sarah's typing. Let's see if we got to her question.
Yeah. Rework is a big metric most people don't use.
All right. The second question on this list is, what are key things to start reliability improvement in an old chemical plant? What are KPIs to track? What staff on the team? What to say to upper management to get buy-in on all levels for the reliability program? So I think this is a very, very nuanced question here, and there's a lot to this. So maybe we could tackle it one by one. Maybe the first one. So basically, it sounds like we're trying to start a reliability program, improvement program at a chemical plant. The first question here, we could tackle it one by one. KPIs to track. Let's say, what are the top 3 KPIs to track when we're starting a reliability improvement plan at an old plant?
I don't like 3 metrics. I want to use the process, the maintenance process. What's the proactive maintenance process? Preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance, maintenance planning, maintenance scheduling, work execution, which goes along with rework. When we execute work, rework, come back again, work order closeout, and so on. Because even work order closeout, I like to have a metric. Typically, what I used to do when I was a maintenance supervisor, we would pull so many work orders every week. One of my technicians would review it and say, did it match equipment history? What is wrong? So if we're having failures, we're still doing preventive maintenance. Something's messed up somewhere.
Yeah. So what I hear from that is like they're kind of like 5 or 6 big buckets, and you want to make sure that each one of these, predictive, preventative, you've got a work order strategy. You cover each one of these 5 or 6 core buckets versus just 3 KPIs that you're hyper focused on.
Yeah. What's your process? We want to measure the process. So if a step in a process is skipped, the performance substandard level create defect known as failures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. It sticks in my head. This great maintenance engineer that I worked with for a while, man, he just beat it in my head about that. If we don't measure it, we don't know how well we're doing.
Yeah. And so the next part of this question is what members on our team should I involve to start this reliability improvement program? Engineers, planners, upper management?
Everyone? Upper management buy-in is a big deal. Just like with this plant. I've been in this one plant for a while, off and on, and the vice president finally stepped in and says, we're going to do something, Ricky. What do we need to do? What do we need to start with first?
Yeah.
And it's an old plant, just like you're talking about. I said, well, one thing we're going to start is education, knowledge. He said, I agree. That's perfect. Because we got to start giving them knowledge, because the knowledge they have right now is not the right knowledge. What is best practices? That's what we got to know. What is best demonstrated practice as we move forward?
Yeah. I think, just thinking about this real quick, I also think you have to have a why, right? Like we can create the maintenance process, but you ultimately have to have a goal with this reliability improvement plan at your plant. Yeah, because we can set out on a goal. We can set out on a goal to be world class, but ultimately, if we don't know why we're doing it, I can almost guarantee you that it will never get done.
But this plant I was talking about working with right now, the plant manager, that was his point. He says, what are our expectations? What do we expect to do? What do we expect to gain out of it? And right now, OEE's high, believe it or not.
Yeah.
OEE is like 92%, but it doesn't match what I see. The first thing he understands is we got to be honest with ourselves. We got to have good data.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people measure the wrong thing. We can have 100 PM compliance, but the equipment still fails. It doesn't make sense. Not logical. That's insanity. Performing preventive maintenance on equipment continues to break down.
Yeah. And then having great metrics to say, hey, look, we're going to get 100% compliance.
Yeah. That's why I like PM labor hours with emergency urgent labor hours.
Yeah.
Correlate them. They'll tell you something. They'll tell you a story.
All right. Next up on our maintenance strategy question. How do you estimate maintenance budget for machines and equipment if there's no data around machine downtime and repair cost? This is a good question. Replacement asset value. What do you look at, Ricky?
Maintenance cost is the percentage of replacement asset value. It's the number one metric. Yep. But now to get the replacement asset value, that's where people kind of lose it. And so what I try to do is get senior leadership to tell me what is the insured value of the plant, because we got to establish a baseline. I don't care about what the rest of the world is doing. We need to establish a baseline. So maintenance cost is a percentage of replacement asset value. We're going to take away replacement asset value. We're going to say insured value. Okay. So what is your current maintenance cost? That's what I need to know. And that percentage will tell us something, because as we move forward and we measure it, I'd say you could measure it every month if you want to. I don't think you're going to get much out of it. At first, the costs are going to go up, and then they'll start going down, because you got to invest. So costs go up, and then they go down. And that's what that maintenance cost is, the percentage of replacement asset value or insured value will tell you.
What's a good range? Do you have a good range?
Good range for replacement asset value?
Yeah.
3.4%.
I'm going to ask a more difficult question here, Ricky. Where did 3.4% come from? I don't know.
It come from Alcoa Mount Holly.
Yeah.
World-class model. Proven.
Yeah.
In fact, Heather's dealing with some of the guys from Century Aluminum. They know what I'm talking about, because they were bought by Alcoa, which brought that same method throughout all of their smelters.
Just
$1 billion asset.
On a I'm sure you've seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of different plants. What range do you think most companies operate in as a maintenance budget as it relates to replacement
value? Yeah. Most of them operate anywhere from 6% up to 11, 12%. There may be some that are outliers higher, but that's kind of based on my experience.
Yeah. So suboptimal, and definitely something to achieve.
Yeah.
All right. Last question here on this maintenance strategy list. What are the first steps to setting up a maintenance strategy for moving into RCM?
First step for setting up a maintenance strategy from moving into RCM.
Yeah.
So what we're going to take baby steps first. So we're going to do like we were when we were an infant. We're going to crawl first very well. And then once we crawl well, then we're going to walk very well. And then we can run. But until we're set up with our maintenance strategy, then moving into RCM is ultimately where we want to go. New plants, if we can use RCM, FMEA to start with, it's great. And there's software tools that once you put that equipment in, it will tell you what strategy you need to use on it. And then you can make a decision how complicated you want it or how simple you want it. But that's based on asset criticality and defect severity.
All right. Crawl, walk, run. We got even more questions around maintenance strategy, actually. But we had another question come in from Sarah. What's a good level of PM hours versus reactive hours? I think, again, this is probably a more nuanced question, because I think what I heard from you is you want emergency hours correlated to PM hours. Is that right?
Yeah. And the correlation will tell me if my reactive hours, they may increase at first. If we start doing the right PM, because we're taking equipment down a little longer. But at some point it will drop dramatically. So labor hours tell you a lot, and very few companies track labor hours because they don't have accurate work order closeout. Yeah. So they don't know where they're doing this at. So PM labor hours versus emergency labor hours or reactive hours, it tells you a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to say, is there a good level of, number of hours, but what's
a trend, Ryan?
We're looking for trends, exactly. And what you want to see is, more PM hours, fewer reactive hours, versus the other way around.
Yeah.
Or, even sometimes what you could have is, more PM hours and more reactive hours. So it's more about the trend versus the absolute number.
Well, what's going to happen at first, you start changing your PM program, what's going to happen is, or you start changing, your operation, you're going to see PM labor hours, stay fairly static, and the emergency hours is probably going to go up at first. It always happens.
Why is that, actually?
Because we starting to finally pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
We're going to have the equipment down a little longer maybe than we normally have. But, that's why it's about the cost. The cost is going to save us, because we're going to increase cost, but then cost is going to come down as we start doing all the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
I see Sarah saying, what's a good level of PM hours versus emergency labor hours? Sarah, It's all in where you are. The best thing to do is establish the baseline. That's all I can tell you. Start measuring. In other words, if your people are not closing out work orders correctly, that's a good place to start, because you're not going to get that information if they're not closing out work orders correctly. The person that should close it out, the final closeout, is the maintenance planner. The maintenance supervisor should review the work orders before they close out. The planner is the last one sitting calm in his office or her office, and they push the button, because once it goes in that CMMS, there's no changing it. I want good data.
All right, good, clean data. That's the goal. That's the dream. All right, the last question here on the maintenance strategy category is, when implementing lean maintenance within an organization, is it important to make value stream mapping of maintenance processes, and why?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, a lot of companies use it. You know, you can there's books out there like Lean Maintenance, and lean maintenance has this type of knowledge in it, what we're talking about here. But the value stream, so what is one value stream in maintenance? What do you think? Preventive maintenance, is that a value? Does it add value?
Does it add value? Yes, but ultimately, well, again, the goal here is kind of what we were talking about. It's not necessarily preventive maintenance. It's
no
uptime of our equipment, right? That's
right. But it's the process of the value stream. Yeah. So the value is the stream, it's our maintenance process that's in alignment that gives us the ultimate goal of what we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So not having good preventive maintenance, not having good planning and scheduling, not having good work execution, if one of those are each one of those are value streams, and each one of them, if they're not consistent, then you're not going to get the end result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, that concludes our Q&A from the maintenance strategy section, and I want to thank everyone for asking these and submitting these questions. Duke, we got Sue, Emad, Manuel, and a few anonymous folks that also asked some questions that contributed here. All right, let's pivot over into our next set of questions around culture and management. The first question is, how do you overcome a resistive culture when implementing improvements to maintenance practices? I think we touched on this quite a bit, actually, around implementing RCM. We've talked a little bit about this on getting upper management buy-in and how critical, how important that is. Any other thoughts, ideas here, Ricky, on helping teams overcome this resistance towards change?
I mean, one of the things we talked about already is training. If your people don't have, needs to be trained the same way. They got to be trained with the same knowledge. Because if they have the same knowledge, then the culture begins to change. Because what you got to do is you got to embed it. I mean, if you want to change your culture, you got to show them something different. Just like the metrics, we got to have the metrics. We got to have a dashboard up there to tell us how well are we doing. Because the culture is the worst problem when you're implementing, maintenance practices. People say, why are we doing something different? We've always done it this way. Yeah, and we always get the same results too, which is not good. Okay, if you want positive results, you have to do something different.
Yeah. All right, and again, this next set of questions I think is very, very related to the former one. But what are challenges, frustrations that you run into, that you see other people run into when implementing a reliability culture, and some indicators of success? I think we've talked about a few of these already, Ricky. Some frustrations implementing a reliability culture. I think what you mentioned is, when you first bring this into the team, you often see, the same level of PM hours, but actually more reactive hours in the beginning. So my gut, and what I've also seen from a lot of companies and our customers as well, is this resistance to change, and a lot of these programs get killed before they even really get off the ground, because you see this immediate dip in efficiency.
But think about this, Ryan. What if you've got 4 production lines and all of them have the same equipment? What if we go into one of the equipment and we identify all the problems with it and we restore it? Okay. And then we template that across the 4 lines. You think that would make an impact?
Absolutely.
But we got to maintain it also, right? So before we push that button, we need to make sure we got good PM procedures, predictive maintenance. We got all the things there, repeatable procedures to give us the desired outcome that we want.
Yeah. So how about like early indicators of success when you've run a reliability and implemented this reliability culture? Because I think what this question's getting at is like, you invest a lot of time, money, energy into building this program. But ultimately, I think all of us here know that reliability is a long-term game. And it's hard to really know the payoff until it could be, months, potentially years down the line. What are some early indicators of success that you did it, you set it up, and you did it effectively?
Indicators of success. The best thing to do, a good indicator of success is seeing reactivity going down.
Yep.
You start seeing your people their absenteeism starting to get lower. So very few people not coming to work on time. So you see these kinds of things. You see your safety records start to increase.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things, it's a direct correlation with reliability, asset reliability, and safety, no doubt.
And I think what you also mentioned here too, Ricky, is baseline, look at trends. We have a goal, we have an aspirational goal of, some level of OEE. It doesn't matter whether you're there, but the earliest indicators of success is that you've benchmarked where it was before, and you're seeing slow and steady progress that you're getting there.
Yeah. And one thing Bob's talking about, says an increase in the time to do proactive, activities and opportunities that have decreased the need to be better first. It's back to this. If you start improving, the pat on the back, you got to stop it. Don't pat, hey man, great job. You got us up in 5 minutes, or you got us up in 30 minutes. Last time we were down 2 hours. That's not the reward. The reward is looking at the equipment running the specification. Man, things look good. The maintenance people love it. At first, they don't like it. They don't want to change. But when they start changing, that's the whole reason I created that class on best maintenance technicians. Once they start changing, then you'll see the decrease in failures.
Yeah. All right, next question on culture and management. How do you start a toolbox meeting, and what are some things that one can discuss in this meeting? And I think, Ricky, you're the perfect person to ask this question.
Yeah. I got these toolbox talks and single point lessons on maintenance, all kinds. I mean, I probably got 50 of them, but they're based on when I go to a plant and see a problem, and they're like, how do we get out of this? And so we created a toolbox talk. First thing you do is you got a problem. Okay, we're not lubricating bearings correctly. I'm just take a simple one. So you just create a toolbox talk, and it says, what are the advantages of it? What's the disadvantages? What does the good look like? What does bad look like? And what are the steps involved?
Mm-hmm.
So when you bring in the maintenance techs, you give them all a copy of the toolbox talk. And let me back up. First, you put it in the maintenance shop for a week. Okay, post it on the wall. Put it in the bathroom. Put it in the break room. Put it everywhere. So people start asking the maintenance manager, "Hey, what is this all about? What's this toolbox talk about? Preventive maintenance, And they say, we're going to talk about it Thursday. And then they come back on Wednesday. Hey, can you tell me about this? I don't have time to do it on Thursday. I'm waiting on Thursday. So it starts a rumor, about, hey, they're talking about laying off people. So they go into the meeting and they hear the real truth. And the toolbox says, man, we should have been doing that years ago.
Yeah.
And then you start implementing.
So I'll also do a shameless plug for you as well, Ricky. You have all of these toolbox talks, posted on your LinkedIn. I know you're very, very generous with just posting it. So anyone can basically pull these. Who should be the one to facilitate these meetings? And what's the best way to facilitate a toolbox talk meeting?
The maintenance supervisor should do it. Later, we're going to move it to our best maintenance tech.
Yeah.
But the first maintenance supervisor has got to be the one that says, there's no kidding or joking around. This is serious. And you guys know we have a problem. And explain what the problem is. So this toolbox talk, we're going to try it. Okay. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to do a root cause analysis, the 5 whys probably, and find out why it's not working.
Yeah.
And it works. It works very well.
Absolutely.
But
all right.
One step at a time. Crawl, walk, run. Start with a basic one and move up from there.
All right, next one. How can I better facilitate collaboration between maintenance, operations, safety, storeroom teams at my facility?
Yeah, Ahmed, toolbox talk, short and simple. Absolutely. How can I better collaborate between maintenance, operations, safety, and storeroom teams at my facility? One of the things my recommendation, do a facility, a maintenance assessment of the organization, assess the current state and future state. That's the best way to do it. Because once you assess them against known best practices, then they can say, now I know why we need it. Because it's all about aligning things that we don't know.
Yeah.
And then, allowing people to do what they need to do on their own without someone telling them to do it. We don't need to tell people what to do. A work order should be all that needs to be said.
Yeah. So, on top of that, Bob also mentions happy hours as well, and getting more people involved in collaborating with one another, even outside of the day-to-day. I think something that we've seen very successful within some of our customers as well is, shared alignment of goals. So instead of just creating, separate goals and KPIs for maintenance, operations, safety, storeroom teams, we share goals that support one another. And ultimately, the shared alignment around goals and objectives, I think, really, really unify teams. And we've seen a lot of success within our customer base when they do that.
Great point. One of the things that I've seen work too, place that I worked at, was that, every week, there were certain goals that we had to meet. And if we met them, then everybody got a special tool, whatever that was, and they can take it home with them, or they can keep it. But it was something that add value to them. And I'll tell you what, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. People bought into it tremendously.
Awesome.
I mean, my toolbox has still got tools in it from that long time ago, that I was given.
That's very cool. All right. What else do we have? We've got 5 more minutes. Whoa. All right. How can companies cultivate maintenance leaders? Or maybe more of a question for Ryan, who's had experience in both a facility and a corporate setting. What are some differences in regards to workplace culture? What can facility leaders learn from corporate leaders and vice versa? Ultimately, and I think you would agree with this too, Ricky. It's not about just being the best technician, being the best person who can repair equipment or respond to a firefighter or respond to a fire. It's about people who can inspire change within the organization. We talked a lot about culture and how to push upper management to adopt new technologies, new processes. The leaders, again, are not just the best technicians. They're the ones that can overcome these barriers and inspire change within the organization to do things that might be short-term, bad, but long-term good.
Yeah.
It's the people that can step back out of the day-to-day and say, we know where we are today. We know where we want to be in 5 years from now, and here's the strategy around it. That's ultimately, I think, what separates like a maintenance technician, potentially a maintenance leader within an organization.
Yeah, and the informal leaders are the ones that really lead a lot, and be able to identify who those informal leaders are that people follow, is a big deal.
Yeah.
And we know You know who they are. If you work at a plant, you know who the informal leaders are. Just take it to your advantage. Let them lead the toolbox talk. Let them come up with the idea of the toolbox talk.
Totally agree. We talked about a few strategies, and these, to me, I think, are all opportunities for people to say, hey, I'll take on that responsibility. Yeah. How do companies cultivate maintenance leaders? I think the best way is just giving them opportunities that go outside of their day-to-day responsibilities. And the people that step up, inspire change, and actually lead that change, I think, are the ones that will be the future generation of maintenance leaders within your plant. Doing things like leading a toolbox talk, doing things like leading an RCA, things like running condition-based maintenance on a particular asset within your plant. These are all opportunities that I think, if there is an opportunity and you can raise your hand and say, I want to do it, and I want to inspire that change within our facility to change our culture, change the way that we look at how we do things today, I think that's going to best set up people to become leaders within their organization.
One thing to add to that would be the CMRT or CMRP.
Absolutely.
For people to challenge themselves to it, because then they'll see a whole different world, by going through that. And once they become a CMRT or CMRP, it's the pride within. I don't need to pat on the back. I just patted myself on the back. I got a CMRT or CMRP or CRL, whatever, on the end of my name, PE, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's another great component. So one is like taking opportunities that exist within your plant.
Yep.
The other side of that is like taking opportunities outside of your plant, your facility, and exactly what you're mentioning, Ricky, taking the CMRT, taking the CMRP. These are great resources held by some of the best leaders in the space as well, SMRP. These are great resources that will, I think, further your career if your goals are to become a leader within your facility, your plant.
Yeah. Good
All
point.
right. We actually only have 1 minute left, and what I'm going to do is take this last minute and just say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I really, really appreciate you submitting all these questions. We actually only got to less than half of them today. We had a ton more that did get asked. I really appreciate everyone for submitting all these questions, and also for everyone that is participating today as well. With that being said, I will pass it over to Heather and to basically close this out, and just say thank you once more.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ricky, so much for being here, sharing your thoughts as well. Ryan, thank you so much for hosting, moderating, asking these questions, as well as sharing your thoughts and insights. I really enjoyed the conversation today. Even though I was just doing the screen sharing, I had an awesome time listening and being part of the conversation as well. Thank you, live attendees. It sounds like we maybe have a part 2 in our future. So again, if your question wasn't answered during our time today, I'm so sorry, but please feel free to drop it in the maintenance community on Slack and get some answers from other experts as well as your fellow community members. That is all for today. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.